Credible Messenger Central. Real stories. Credible resources. Go to www.atripsmovement.com. Women and violence. The effects of violence on women in the community. Women contributions to violence in the community. Sharp rise in women caught carrying knives up 73% in the past 5 years. Women being the more traditional gender of the sexes to be nurturing, loving, and peacemaking are becoming more violent and openly active in crime than ever before seen. Women and gun violence. How do we identify and redirect the rising levels of women using violence within the community?
Prayers out to the young lady from East Harlem, our neighborhood, that was found in the Bronx in a dumpster, was missing for 4 days. Not just the youth. We got to protect the adults too, it seems like.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially when they college degree students and single moms and got their own apartment and their own transportation, and their only child is a straight A student. What is the reward for being a straight A student?
Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to send our condolences to the family. A young lady from our community was found dead yesterday, and she had a lot of potential. I believe she was found in a container, and it shows how much we so close to this work, right? So a lot of my people from the community is really hurting right now, and we want to send our blessings to the family and all the people that's hurting. This was unexpected because she was a young lady, and a missing report went out on her recently, and then they just found her yesterday. So our condolences go out to her and her family.
Thank you for that, brother.
Yeah, it's tragic. So I hope we able to get down to the bottom of what happened with that. And it just goes to show how close we are to this work. Norma Melendez, she was going to actually conduct the group today, but unfortunately, she's very close to the young woman that was found. And so she won't be able to be present with us today. So my love goes out to Norma as well. It just goes to show you how close we are to this work, right? And how it's not really necessarily the guns that's the problem. It's the mentality, right? It's the thought process. We got to change the culture. And so that's why this work is so important, because a lot of people want to focus on the guns. It's not the guns. If you take away the guns, they'll stab each other to death, right? If you take away the guns, they'll beat each other to death. They'll find another way or means, right, to invoke violence upon each other. So we got to change how people feel about one another and how people value each other in the community. So based on that, I want to start getting to work on the topic that we want to address today, and that's women and violence. And I want to get a feel from the group on what you think with a topic like that. When you hear a topic like that, what do you think about women and violence? What comes to mind?
Say that again.
I wanted to hear from the group what comes to mind when they think about the topic of women and violence.
In any order?
Yeah, any order. Anybody could jump in at any time. Let's just be cautious of the time. Just try to give up 15-second sound bites. But go ahead, shoot.
My name is Trevon Donovan. I represent At-Risk Movement, also Corporate Corners, and JFK Management. When I think about women and violence, I'm heartbroken right now. So I don't want to come from an emotional place. I want to come from an academic place. And the household is falling apart without pointing a finger. The household is falling apart. And last time I checked, the woman was the head of the household. As far as in my life and when I grew up and how I see things now. So if we ain't protecting the women, then the household is pretty much either left to the kids or is no longer going to exist. So there's a problem with the violence on women, whether people are mentally triggered to think that the woman in a household is the enemy, or whether the man is just not educated enough to deal with a strong-minded woman. Whatever the problem is, everybody has a mental health issue that's not into academics and something busy with their life. And I'll end it on that.
As a female, what I'm going to say is that it worries me. It worries me as a woman, the amount of violence and the degree of anger in people towards women, especially women of color. I feel like it's cultural. It's not just what we're teaching children in the household. It's when they leave it. It's in the music. Women themselves, some women, are part of this violence. Even though it's perpetuated towards us, some women are more violent than men. And as a result, you know, you brought up something, Trey, and you always make me think about something. Women, like you said, a lot of us come from women-led households, women and households. So what ends up happening is if that woman was a violent, not violent, but let's say she chastised you different. You know, those women in the store, you don't ask for nothing, don't touch nothing, and when you do, they're yelling and screaming at the babies in the store.
Yeah.
Now that young man grows up, and when he meets me as a woman, let's say young woman, I don't know his trauma from when he grew up. I yelled at him one day. He smacked flames out me because he didn't like the way I was talking to him. Trauma, right? We all have trauma, but everybody's is different. So my thing is, it's not something that we just have to look at in the households. We have to look at it as a systemic issue, because this is systemic now.
Yeah, but we got to start somewhere.
Yeah, so I'm glad we're having this conversation, and my condolences goes out to the young lady and her family, as well as the young man that got. But I feel like this is a conversation, and I'm glad, Maritza, Aisha, thank you for showing up, because these, like you said, we need to look at it non-emotional, but look at it as what we as a community can definitely do about some of this, because it's more than just getting the guns off, because we know that that's not stopping the violence. That's not stopping.
Listen, before we had guns, we still had conflict. And you have to be a student, an academic student, to understand that. You had to really study in history and those type of things, because they actually told us what had happened before. And if you didn't go to school, you actually could read the Bible and see that all of this has happened before. And then we came to a point where we calmed it down, and now we're coming to a point where we get back to it. So it's like, I don't think it's really no rocket science to fix this, but how can we fix everybody? Like right now, we fixing each other right now. Me and you and everybody in this group, we already attempted to fix ourselves. But how is this going to trickle down to everybody else? And I think those are some of the goals that we need to add to our agenda.
I think, we're, like you said, this particular group of people, we already know what needs to be done, and I think a lot of us are already implementing it. I work with 16 to 24-year-old young men. I present myself as a woman with these young men. I let them know that I know, and when I say I play my position, like you said, a lot of this comes from us not treating each other with love.
Facts.
If you do it from a place of love, I remember when I was upstate, I never wanted to know what people were in prison for. And the reason I didn't want to know is because I didn't want to treat you different based on your charge, right?
I'm listening.
What I learned about women when I was in prison is that a lot of the trauma that we went through led up to that case. Those things is what led up to it. In other words, we teach our children, if somebody hits you, hit them back, right?
Right. Hold on, Afi. Before you get into that, I want Maritza to be able to say something. She had her hand raised,
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to join and be a part of this. First and foremost, my condolences to the family of the young lady that was found this morning. Well, yesterday morning, and to the gentleman that was shot as well. When I think of women in violence, I think of an ongoing cycle that we and everybody pretty much touched on it. History, right? History has a way of repeating itself, and what we see, we perpetuate, and we think is acceptable as women and men. Yes. You know, and I'm very transparent. I was born into a household where my father hit my mother, and they're still together to this day. And I thought it was acceptable for me to be hit when I was in my first long-term relationship, and I stayed for as long as I could stay. And even still, sometimes, you know, again, my mother saw that with her father and thought it was acceptable and decided to stay with my father. And when I decided to leave my abusive relationship, she could not understand why I was leaving, because I had a child with the person. And she's like, well, you have to try to stick it out. And I had to tell her, you know, what I saw you go through with my dad is something that I said I would never do and never want to experience. And I did experience it. But at what point do you get tired and just say, you know what? I don't want to live my life being bruised and battered and scars and broken legs and broken hands and, I mean, toes, fingers, you name it, broken. And I think that it's important that because we have experienced these traumatic experiences, that we are that voice for our youth, for the young men and the women that we interact with every single day. Because the reality is sometimes they just need that person to understand that they've gone through it as well. Just because, again, I may appear to be a certain way, you know, we talk about people we don't like being judged, but we judge people all the time based off of appearances. Well, I don't know your story and you don't know mine. You judging me based off what I look like and what you see, but you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what my story is, just like I don't know yours. So, you know, I think that's very important. And I always try to give that perspective to the participants and the staff that I work with each and every day.
Perfect.
Thank you for
You're
sharing.
100% correct. I feel the same way.
Aisha, you have your hand raised.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I was invited by my sister, Afi. I'm a very spiritual person, so I come from a very spiritual place when I talk. And a lot of things that we face in our community is a spiritual disconnect. It's a spiritual disconnect, and that spiritual disconnect can come from a lot of different places. It can come from how we view ourselves in this world based on how we were raised, based on how we're perceived by other people, because we have a lot of different masks that we wear. Very few people get to see our vulnerabilities. And when we fight out of fear. What connects that fear? Where does that fear lie in that individual that they feel like they have to destroy? Where does that fear lie where they feel like they have to push away love instead of receiving it? There's a spiritual disconnect. We can say emotional, but emotional is still attached to the spiritual element. Since we live in such a physical world, we lose track that we have a spiritual element.
Yes.
And that's more of a focus than anything else, is where does the spiritual element lie? Is it in a dark space? Is it in a light space? What is their self-worth? What is their value to themselves? And once we get into that, we understand or kind of can prevent some of the things from happening for those that can be saved. We got to understand everybody can't be saved. But for those that can, there's a chance.
You know what I think? You're 100% correct. And I think everybody can be saved. I don't think it's our job, though. I think it's everybody's job. And once we reflect the right narrative, then just like a movie, we all watch the same movie, and then we all emulate the best parts that we like from the movie. But we got to put the right narrative out. Somebody got to take the initiative.
The reason why I say everybody can't be saved, some people just enjoy being evil. Just like people enjoy being good, you got people that get a thrill out of being evil.
Well,
and people have to want to change. You're right. We're not in the process of changing people, but planting the seed allows the person the opportunity to decide if they want to change. We can't live in a perfect world. It's impossible.
A lot of times I like to use the type of language like when I deal with my participants, I try not to use the language of change because it makes them appear like it's something wrong with them, right? And so they get defensive, right? They start to defend themselves. So what I say is evolve, right? Because when they look at evolve, they look at it as if it's a sense of growth and a process of growing, right? And so that gonna bring us to our topic at hand, and that's the women in violence. And I wanted to get into this material to see what y'all thought about it. The effects of women in violence in minority communities. Women contributions to violence in the community. A sharp rise in women caught carrying knives, up 73% in the past 5 years. Women being the more traditional gender of the sexes to be nurturing, loving, and peacemaking are becoming more violent and openly active in crime than ever before. If both men and women are equally active in crime and violence, will the entire minority community be consumed in a perpetual state of anarchy? Motherly love. Some familiar quotes. 1, how many mothers have told their children, if someone hits you, hit them back? 2, how many mothers have told their children, if you don't whip their ass, I'm going to whip yours? 3, how many mothers have told their children, if they're bigger than you, pick up something and hit them with it? Well-intended mothers attempting to protect their children by preparing them for a dangerous world have often approved violence. Some have done so without the proper context. So children, under the impression that their mother approves them of using violence, have pushed limits. Instead of strictly protecting themselves, some youth settle any and all disputes through force if they deem necessary. What do you think about that? I want to get some input on that before we move forward.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Everything that you said, G, my mother has said to me. As the youngest in my bunch of cousins, and I'm my mother's only child, I was her only child, and 15 boys, my mother used to say, you better pick up something. You better not come in here crying, because it was 15 of them and me. So she knew that I had to have a voice in order to deal with my cousins the way I needed to. However, my mother also taught me to articulate and use my words when needed. So like you said, my mother taught me to have it in context, but my mother also was the first person that taught me my hands was bisexual, which means that if a boy hits you, you hit him back. If a girl hits you, hit him back, right? But I grew up in an era where we fought. We used our hands for the most part. And then, it got a little crazy as I got into my teen years, but I went to prison at 17. So I'll be honest with y'all, there's certain things I don't understand. I don't understand how we go from, we can have a conversation, and with women I'm talking about, to on site. We're supposed to be women. Like, I feel like we've emulated certain behaviors so much, and society has said certain behaviors are okay. So we think that the more masculine, some women, not all women, but some women think, G, that what you just said is universal. That we're supposed to bring that same thinking into every aspect of our lives. So that's where I'm at with it, that I feel like we got to change this narrative, like Trayvon and you said earlier. We got to change the narrative, and we got to change what we're telling our children, because that stuff doesn't work no more. Now, if somebody hits you and you hit them back and they can't take a L, they may come back and shoot you. So I would not recommend that for a child now.
So I am one of those mothers that is guilty of teaching her children that if someone hits you, you hit them back. That if you don't beat them up when you come home, I'm gonna beat you up.
Not guilty though. Not guilty.
I mean, and again, it's us.
let's do the narrative all the way right. They could have had a little more instructions, but proper instructions. Self-preservation. Self-preservation.
I want to hear
First
that.
duty on this planet Earth as a human. Self-preservation from the plants, from the animals, from the insects to another human being. But also being the protector and defender of this planet and teaching the plants, the animals how to obey. That was our duty if we all read the Bible. And I'm not trying to be religious. I don't know what nobody studied. You know what I mean?
Right. No. And I mean, being a mother of a 25-year-old, a 17-year-old, and now a 1-year-old, as Afi stated earlier, there's a difference, right? So I always taught my 25-year-old, like, listen, if they bigger than you, when he was getting bullied in school, I was like, fill your backpack up with a whole bunch of hard textbooks and knock his ass out. Can't beat him with your hands, beat him with something. Come home, beat, I'm going to beat you. And don't worry about getting in trouble because I'm going to go to the school and I'm going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. But, you know, that was a different time. Like, even, you know, and my oldest son was born in 1996. That was a different time. Now with my 1-year-old, it's like, what do I tell him when he starts to go to school and get bullied? Because it's different. You know, these kids don't fight with their hands nowadays. Like
they call 911.
Shooting, you know, and my husband is like, listen, let him call 911. Yeah, don't stay hit. You hit him back, but you know, you go to the teacher, you do this, you do that. And that all sounds good, but for those of us that were raised differently and were raised in an environment where you had to fight to get through, you know, it's kind of hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard for me, right? Again,
yeah,
like
my God, kids, I'm coming to the school. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you know, if
ladies, the butterfly, the caterpillar doesn't remain the caterpillar. It turns into the butterfly. So the butterfly doesn't have the same rules anymore as the caterpillar had on the ground. Right. So if you're willing to elevate in life, then there's going to be another set of rules for the elevation. But if you're going to stay in the same place, then the same rules apply.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I also feel like, as a female, would you say that the way that you raised your oldest, right? This is what I'm going to say. I don't have children. That's not on my resume. But what I would hope is that I'm giving children the right advice when I give it. What I tell people is, first of all, we need to learn how to speak. As people, we need to learn how to talk to each other and stop talking at each other. That starts in the household. Would you say that you're raising your 1-year-old Maritza, honestly, way different than you did the 25 and 17-year-old?
Absolutely. One, because the 25-year-old, when I had him, I was 14. So I myself was a child. And being a child that grew up in a different environment and had to, you know, again, I mean, I grew up in East New York, Brooklyn. All we did was fight. It was different, you know, like it was different. I didn't have that patience that I have now to try to break things down. And I even mentally wasn't there to be able to break things down the right way. For me, everything was, okay, somebody hit you, hit them back. If you don't hit them back and you come to me crying, I'm gonna beat you, you know? Then the 17-year-old, I call it, he's my bonus son. That's my husband's son. And my husband raised him the same way, but in a little differently. But I would say maybe a little better in reacting. Like, he's slow to the anger. He's slow to react. You know, yes, don't be a punk, but at the same time, think about what you're going to do before you do it. So he's not, you know, he's not that kind of kid. You know, like he does well in school. He's never been in a fight, had people approach him, but he's just not that kind of kid. You know, not to say that if somebody didn't hook off on him, he wouldn't hook off on him, but he's not going to be the first one to do anything. You know, he's going to go about it a different way. And now with the 1-year-old, absolutely different. You know, now I have a little bit more patience. I have more knowledge. I've been through my things. You know, the things in life that I've been through, I damn sure don't want any of my kids to go through. So it's my duty to make sure that I raise them differently. And also they're raised in a different environment than I was raised in. You know, they don't see violence in the household. Right. They don't see, that's my 25-year-old that just walked past now. You know, they don't see violence in the household. They don't see all those things that, yeah, they may see an argument, but they don't see all the things that I saw growing up. They don't see my father, you know, my husband hitting me with a bat on my back. Like, they don't see that. So the situation is different. So yes, it absolutely is different. And I'm not gonna lie, you know, like, it's scary for me to raise a 1-year-old in this day and age when things are different, right? Because everything violence-wise is different. Like you said, we fought with our hands. We had an issue, okay, let's go outside, we're gonna fight with our hands. Nowadays, you gotta worry about, okay, if I go to talk to this parent because that child is bullying my child, me and them might get into it. You know, and then here I go, I'm going to jail for life, or I'm going in the box, or vice versa, you know. So it really takes and it requires a lot more thought behind what I say and how I do things. And it really requires a lot of listening to my husband, because again, his thought process is different. And his reaction is different to things. But that's because we were also raised in different environments.
So one of the things that I think about because I've been a young man and I've been taught all of those rules, right? And I'm from the streets and I'm a street fighter, right? So, yo, peace and blessings. And I'm good at it, right? And so what end up happening is that I'm all right. Yeah, all right. Yeah, all right. Yeah, you know. So more or less, I became a mischief maker though, right? Because I had skills and I was able to go different places and create mischief, right? So what I learned from that situation is that our young men, they have this testosterone, they have this energy, and they need to put it somewhere. And they need a place where they could be able to put that energy, right? And we don't have places and options for these young men to do that. And so they end up getting criminalized, right? So what I designed was something I called the At-Risk Movement Fight Club, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on a mission later, because I'm building it out, where I'm going to go to all of the big homies and have the big homies have their homies sign up. Where, yo, if you got a dispute and you want to settle a dispute with a man, shoot the fifth, right? And it's going to be in a octagon. I spoke with the UFC. I went out to the UFC to see if I could get them in an octagon. And right now in New York State, they're not allowing fights to happen. So when we're able to allow them to get 5 minutes, we're going to have people in there that's going to they're going to referee the match, and they're going to give them counseling, you know, for those that might lose, right? Listen, we going to counsel you and train you. You came and fought like a man, right? And that's what matters, right? So if people is getting picked on, what we trying to do is change the culture. We trying to police our communities as credible messengers, right? When we see issues in the street, we break those issues up, right? And also, when they have that fighting energy where it ain't nothing to talk about, instead of shooting, go ahead, shoot the fifth, shoot a fair one, no crews involved, one-on-one. Y'all both walk away like men, and the situation is over, right? And we make those type of agreements. But that's something I'm working on to build that out. But let me proceed on with the historical context of women and violence, right? In the 1980s, when violence was so frequent, who could blame women for wanting to protect themselves and their children? During the crack era, a lot of violence spread throughout the nation. Many minority women were left with children to rear in a hostile environment with no permanent male figure. They had to protect themselves and teach their children how to protect themselves as well. Without the proper guidance and monitoring, some of these youth became mischief makers. All right, the undefeated femme fatale. What is some of the ways that women instigate violence in minority communities? What is the definition of a femme fatale? Well, a femme fatale is an attractive and seductive woman, especially one who is likely to cause distress or disaster to a man who becomes involved with her. That's the dictionary version of a femme fatale. The reputable messenger definition of a femme fatale is a woman that is the cause or center of violence. A beautiful woman that lures men into danger. A woman who provokes violence, whether intentional or unintentionally. A woman who dates dangerous men for the purpose of using his power to create chaos. A woman who is confrontational and uses the men in their lives, brothers, fathers, cousins, uncles, friends, etc., to shield them from the mischief that they create or fight and defend them. 6, a beautiful woman who uses beauty to seduce men and manipulate them for their current want, need, or desire. So right now, what I want to do is share my screen with you guys.
The famous twins, rappers, and TikTokers from Mobile, Alabama, they have close to 1.5 million followers on TikTok. They gained nationwide attention in late June 2021 after the news surfaced about how 5 people's lives and their families were torn apart because of these selfish and reckless twins. The twins had an argument, the one you see on the left, Twin Nim, versus the one you see on the right, Twin Sway, and Sway's boyfriend. Twin Nim instigated and escalated the whole argument. Then she called her stepdad over and riled him up to defend her. Yeah, and another twin on the left, she tries to tell the story a different way. I've seen her several times trying to tell this story, and she conveniently omits the parts that shows how she was the one behind this whole chain of events. But what she did was call the stepfather up, and she instigated a fight. The other twin's boyfriend was acting in self-defense, as reported by the Mobile police. The situation ended with the stepdad being knocked off by Twin Sway's boyfriend. And while all of this was going on, Twin Sway's best friend, she was there. An innocent bystander, she was also struck. She eventually passed away a couple of weeks later. Bree, the best friend, her boyfriend, he retaliated by going to Twin Sway's boyfriend's house. But he had one big problem. He went to the wrong house. So now Bree's boyfriend, he's now responsible for the life of James Jones. Innocent man on dialysis, minding his own business at home. Didn't even know these toxic people. So that's 5 people, 3 of them passed away. The stepdad, Twin Sway's best friend, and an elderly innocent man who didn't even know these people. All of this because of these twins. And I'll leave all the videos below if you want to catch up on the full story. I brought the information to you when all this happened. But here's the thing. Another family out of Mobile, Alabama. They're saying that this Twin Nim, is somehow responsible for the life of a 2-year-old boy that passed away. Now, after all of this happened, the twins continued with their toxic behavior. And by the way, they know they are toxic. They admitted it in previous videos, putting paws on each other on live, getting into trouble with the law. The same city girls mixed in with the NBA young boy mentality. And now I'm here to report to you that one of the twins, Twin Allie, aka Twin Nim, she's been called out by a mother who said that she's responsible for the passing of her 2-year-old boy. On Saturday, November 13th, 2021, at approximately 7:57 a.m., police responded to the 1200 block of Alba Street in Mobile, Alabama. They found out that this 2-year-old baby boy was transported to the Children's Hospital where he stayed for a couple of weeks before passing away from his injuries to his head on December 5th, 2021. It was reported that the baby got a hold to a loaded gun and accidentally shot himself in the head. The family came out and said that the gun belonged to Twin Nim. That's Twin Nim of the famous TikTok twins. She was over at the same house where this baby and his father was at. She slept over there, and apparently she had this gun underneath her pillow. The baby got a hold to it, and that's what happened. She went on to explain herself here.
In the head, it wasn't on purpose, right? On my life, it wasn't on purpose. For her to try, she got a right to get mad, but stop trying to act like I did that junk on purpose. I ain't do that junk. So now I'm more recently paralyzed her baby daddy and paralyzed him and pistol with the girl he was with. Her and walk or whatever like that. So that's the only reason why I had to get over that period. So just in case she tried to come over on some dumb junk by her baby daddy.
So that right right there was twin Nim.
I would like to get y'all thoughts on that.
Let me just jump in right here. Dr. Woodard, and first my condolences and prayers to all those that suffer loss. And this whole topic is really very distressing in a lot of ways. Women, when I first think about women and violence, I think about them being a victim, but then we also see where they're not. And one of the things that I think we need to look at and understand is that children live what they learn. And part of what we should do, I think, with the at-risk movement is to look at work with families, to parents in particular, to help them do things differently when it comes to raising their children, and also help them understand that the children learn how to treat one another based on how they see, say, their mother treating their dad, or the dad treating, or the dad treating the mother. That's how they learn. And so we've got to help them understand that they're going to model what they see. And so when we can get that really understood by everyone, then I think we can start making a difference. But we need to understand that, they need to understand that, and we need to give them other alternatives. We got mothers raising babies, and we got mothers raising children with no men. So that's where mentoring comes into play, so that they can at least have a man in their lives so they can learn how to do things the way men do things, or the way male do things. And one other thing before I go is discipline. Back in the day, they used to whip the children and say, I'm doing it because I love you. So children grew up believing that that's how you show love. You beat somebody.
Right.
Okay, that's got to change. Go ahead.
Hey, can I add something real quick? Hey, Professor, Doctor, always a pleasure to listen to you. I like to put parables out there because I ain't finished school. So I got things going on in my mind that I really can't speak the language to explain, right? And I'm going to go back and study and get myself together. But if it takes a village to raise a child, right? That's the narrative that I was taught when I was young. What does it take to raise a man? And that's where the root word of mentoring come from, is men. And we can't have men without helping at least one man become a man, so other men will know how to, other boys will learn how to be a man. And that's what I want to contribute, y'all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Robbie O.
I love you, bro.
Yo, what's going on? I love you too, man. Hey.
How you feel?
That person.
Now I see why he kept jumping in the can. What's going on, man? Yo, where y'all at?
I still love my brothers from day one, you heard?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Hey, we in Ohio at our your next branch of your business.
Okay, so I wanna move on, right, to this next clip, right? And I want y'all to weigh in on this one, because this one was quite interesting to me.
Woman who was caught on camera firing shots at a man in the parking lot of a Detroit gas station. Bars this morning. She was arrested late last night. Our Jennifer Ann Wilson is now live from the west side with a dramatic video of this incident. Jen.
Oh, we sure do. Now, Malcolm, this is an incident that could have happened anywhere on a dark sidewalk like the one I'm walking on now, but it didn't. It happened at a Greenlight gas station, and that's why police say they were able to identify this woman and catch her so quickly. Now, take a look at this video that we were able to get a hold of. You can see the woman that police say opened fire at a gas station at 4:30 in the morning. This was at Fenkel and Greenfield yesterday at 4:30 in the morning. Now, the woman is one of 4 people who were in a blue Dodge Charger. The other vehicle, a green Pontiac Grand Prix, And police say a heated argument broke out between the people in both cars, but that woman, police say, grabbed a handgun and within a matter of seconds fired several shots at the driver of the Pontiac, who then, get this, runs over one of the men from the other car. This ugly, out-of-control scene all captured with high-resolution cameras, all part of this new Project Greenlight program. The incident ends with both drivers speeding off after a man wrestles the gun away. But shortly after, all occupants of the Grand Prix returned to the scene, surrendered the weapon. The driver who was shot taken to the hospital with unknown injuries. No word on the other man who was hit and run over. Now, the suspect, police say, was 5'2", and again, she is now in custody.
So, what y'all think about that video right there?
First thing, she can't aim. That's number one, right? Her aim is horrible. But more importantly than that, I get a little confused when I see things like this. I blame men. I blame Black men in particular with us as women, because when I say blame y'all, what I mean is y'all give us mixed messages. In one breath, you want a rider, you want a woman that's going to bust guns with you, hide you when you get in trouble, run up to ruckus, bring pat down, wear 3/4 of course, right? And then in another breath, you want us to be something that, because of our environments, like the doctor said, we're growing up seeing certain things. So we can't cower. We got to protect ourselves, protect our community. Some women, we feel like we got the hood on our backs because a lot of y'all are not stepping up. So it gets confusing. I'll say that. I get confused, even myself, and I'm grown and highly educated. I even get confused sometimes about what my role in certain things really is, because you don't want to overstep your hand and end up in a situation like that young lady, because she clearly was not thinking. And you can't even aim, so you shouldn't even have had a gun. So that's another thing. Anyway, the violence is just off the chain, right? But because women are emotional beings, and I love what Aisha said in the beginning, we are also spiritual beings. Life forms in our wombs. So it makes you wonder how this disconnect happened so fast. And within the last like 30 years, there's such a disconnect, G. And the two videos that you showed, clearly these young women need mental health help. And that's the thing we don't talk about in our communities. And the spiritual, I feel like we have a bunch of churches, but they're not involved. We have a bunch of mothers, they're not involved. So it leaves it to people like us, and we're doing right now what we need to do to do it. But I like what Trayvon said, we need the men to help raise these men because we're not men. But we also need men to understand that some of the damage that's being done by not being there and then doing the things that y'all do, y'all create some of these systemic issues. And what Maritza said earlier about history, I want everybody to think about this. History don't repeat itself, people do. So that's my motto. History does not repeat itself, people do, and I feel like we have to change the history. We have to change the trajectory of what we're putting out there.
I think Mr. Brooks was on the something. We need to get the word change out of our diet, out of our mental vocabulary, and we need to say the word evolve or words similar to that, because that's the caterpillar and the butterfly effect. It evolves. People could say mutated, but it's interpretation of oneself. You understand? So all of this is still an individual journey, as well as the collective.
Yes. Well, I put a questionnaire in the chat for everybody in the group to check out. Y'all could copy and paste it. Y'all could but I would like to get a basic understanding of how everybody feel about some of the questions that's in the questionnaire. So I'll put it in the chat for everybody to be able to get. One of the things that I wanted to say about women and gun violence is that it's virtually being ignored, despite the fact that women use of gun violence is becoming more common, and it's not really being discussed often in mainstream media. It be reported and then the story gets shelved. However, the implications of more women using guns to settle disputes is very disturbing. How do we identify and redirect the rising levels of women using violence within minority communities? How can credible messengers prevent situations like this?
I think we do it well. This group the women that I deal with, we do it on a regular basis. We out here, we talk, we have conversations. We communicate, and I think that's a big part. We communicate, and we make sure when people walk away from us, they're clear about the expectation and the accountability. See, that's my thing with women. We need to start holding people accountable for their actions. And I'm not saying punish them for their actions so much so as hold them accountable, because guess what? If we hold people accountable, they'll start police. Now, I don't like to use the word policing, but policing themselves. You know, they are policing themselves, because I'm accountable for what I can't say I'm a credible messenger and want my, as Trayvon loves to say, my evolution to involve my people, but I'm constantly hurting my people. I look at the big homies now. I remember when I was growing up, the gangs protected the community. They were there for a reason. Now we've moved so far away from that. Instead of building up, they are building down and destroying. We're supposed to build and build up and you know, build empires, but we're not.
I tell you something, we're supposed to do both, as above, as below. Research it. This is not no secret. How could it be a secret if our family taught the whole world?
Exactly.
Aisha has her hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Aisha.
Thank you. I want to first say I appreciate being a part of this group. I'm kind of emotionally and spiritually overwhelmed by the whole content, because I stay in a small city upstate New York. I see my share of violence, but not on the scale of bigger cities. Now, with that being said, I want to bring out the dynamics of minority women, women of color. You know what I'm saying? We have been so inundated with having to protect the household. We've become hermaphrodites of the mind. We have a masculine and a feminine duality, and sometimes we don't know how to change in between, because we're constantly on alert. We have to constantly be on a swivel. You know what I mean? So as a result of being on a swivel, I really think that a man's position with minority women in particular is that they have to bring a certain amount of safety into the relationship, to bring and breed out that femininity that the woman wants to feel but afraid to feel, because she doesn't want to feel vulnerable. She don't want the rest of the world to take advantage of her. So when we get into our masculine, you said they say it's a thin line between love and hate. That song where he says, I'm sitting in a bed and I'm bandaged from head to toe. A woman can bring out a rage that is unlike a man. A man is more structured in detail. He's a detail. A woman is emotional. So when a woman gets emotional, it's like the earth shaking. Because literally the groundation of a woman is the spirituality aspect. That's why she's able to give birth, and a man plants the seed in her to give that birth. But when a woman becomes angry, she becomes like an earthquake. That's why most of these natural disasters is named after a woman. So in order to bring out that femininity, that man has to play that dominant role, not dominant as in dominating a woman, but to cultivate that femininity in a woman to where she doesn't have to feel that masculine presence in her all the time. As a result of feeling that masculine presence in her all the time, she doesn't know how to be that feminine. She wants to be. We want to be because it's in our nature to be. But it's also in our nature to conform to that man principle. But if that man is not present, we take on that hermaphrodite, mindset to where we swivel in between and not know when to let one play its role.
Okay. Hold on. But before we continue on, in respect for everybody's time, I know we only have 5 minutes left. What I did want to say, as far as the at-risk movement is concerned, if y'all look into the chat, y'all could see that one of the solutions that the at-risk movement came up with was to work with dedicated women and create a womanhood workshops for young women and girls affected by violence within minority communities. And so what I think that what I've done with the at-risk movement is I created manhood workshops for young men, right? Because I know and understand young men don't know what manhood truly entails. They think that it's really just 3 different elements, right? Having sex, making money, and being tough, right? But they don't understand that it's more than that, right? They don't understand that it's community, it's education, it's, family, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to do is do it for women as well, right? And women and girls. So have credible messengers kind of create a woman workshop that teaches women how to become feminine again, just as well as men need to start teaching men how to become men again. So any thoughts on that, y'all could share, and then we could close out.
And I think the second part of that, my brother, once they go through the workshop with each other, men and men, women and women, is then the second would be to get men and women together to go through a similar kind of workshop so that they can relate and talk one to each other.
I second that emotion.
I as well. As a woman, I don't know how feminine I'm gonna be, but I'm gonna do my best. I think I do that work right now. I run a group workshop every third Saturday of the month with a beautiful group of women. And we're working on that.
Be that balance, queen. Be that balance.
I'm trying, King.
We doing this. We gonna change all the words out of our diet. We gonna help each other.
It's power in the word I am.
I am. You know, I am the I am that I am.
I am.
You know, I'll give it up.
Because I will cry and all that other stuff. We got to get into quantum physics. We gotta speak those things as if they were already.
That's right.
I think that's faith.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, and faith without works.
All of this, listen. Even though the Bible is important, all of these thoughts that we just gave each other all happened before there was a church, before there was a government, before there was even a congregation. We had these same type of thoughts and we had these same type of issues and we had to figure it out. Here we go again.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Next Saturday will be the last in this series, and then I'll be in contact with all my people to start redoing another workshop or another training series. I appreciate you all for coming out. Happy Saturday. Thank you all for joining us today. I love you. Be safe out there. Right?
Hey, man, your mama
Gregory, don't forget to ask for the email addresses.
I put mine in there. Love you, sisters.
Right. Anybody drop their email addresses in the chat as well. Thank you, Shantae, for reminding me. And have a blessed weekend.
All right, thank you.
You too. Thank you, guys.
Thank all of you. Have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Shooting arrested. Surveillance cameras capture woman draw a gun and shoot the driver at a gas station in Detroit. How can credible messengers prevent situations like this? Reputable messengers on women and violence. www.movement.com